then. Welcome everyone to the Cedars Union. I recognize a lot of your faces. Welcome, welcome. If you're not aware about the Cedars Union, we are an art incubator located in the Cedars neighborhood. This is mainly for the web people. Hello, web people. And we help provide resources to artists such as lowered studio prices, tools, trainings, pro bono services, and also lectures like these. And I would like to welcome Laura Lawson from our first cohort of artists. This was back in 2018, 2019. You've been around with us since then, so you were pretty much one of the longest standing members of the Cedars Union. You predate me.
Only by a little bit.
Just like by a little bit, but that is also kind of impressive at this moment as we have a lot of new faces and a lot of growth. So let's jump into it. Best practices with Laura Lawson. The format of this lecture is we're first going to go do a bit of a deep dive into Laura's life, and then we are going to then follow it up with the 3 best practices that we believe she has in her studio and in her entrepreneurial skills. So, I've known Laura a while. Like a lot of people in the Cedars Union, we get to know each other, we become friends, and then sometimes we share studios, which we did.
We did.
And then sometimes we go to the karaoke bar and there's like mad impressions of certain people that happen in the karaoke room, and what stays in the karaoke room happens, or like it stays there.
Yeah.
It gets put on a slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Polaroids on a slideshow.
Well, let's jump into your life. I know this,
Right.
like, it's not, this picture is irrelevant at the moment, but we're just gonna start there.
Okay.
Would you like to bring or talk about like early stages of life and like what your first influences were?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from North Texas. I've lived in a lot of different places, but one thing that I think really defined my childhood was, 1, being a 90s kid, and 2, all of the really great environmental propaganda that came with that. And I don't mean propaganda in a bad way, but just, you know, I feel like cartoons and kids media were all like reduce, reuse, recycle, and don't pollute, and plant trees, and I was all about it.
Captain Planet.
Hook, line, and sinker, yeah, like that was my jam. That has stayed with me to this day. I still have those values. It shows up in my art quite a bit. But yeah, I would just, as a little kid, I'd be, you know, playing outside, trying to like make little treats for squirrels to eat and stuff like that, like just literally playing in the dirt. And that kind of was my first foray into interacting with the earth.
Mm-hmm. Cutting up those 6-pack pieces of plastic, saving the turtles.
Always.
Which, yes, we still do. And then how, as you do have your rock collection, did you start collecting rocks at a young age?
I did. I still have the box of just anything sparkly that caught my attention would go in the box. And then still on the 90s kid theme, going to the mall with my big sister, going to Natural Wonders, and they had all the rock specimens that I would ask for Christmas. So I had this amazing little rock collection.
Do you remember what you asked for?
Yeah, because I still have the rocks.
Oh, yeah.
I have like a pyrite and a rose quartz and aventurine and tiger's eye, like I could go on.
Yes, the tiger's eye, very 90s. Yes, love it, love it. So during this time, you were moving around a lot. Can you kind of tell us about like why you were moving around and like where you were?
Yeah, not in the military or anything, but ironically, that brought us to the U.S. Naval Academy. My dad worked there as a civilian, so despite growing up in Texas, you know, lived in Waco and Lubbock, a couple other places, but we went to Annapolis for a short while for that job. So he managed restaurants, and we just kind of followed him wherever that worked out.
But you landed at like the Naval Center.
The Naval Academy.
Naval Academy, sorry. And like how did that start blossoming your story about like science and like space exploration?
Yeah, I don't know the first moment when I got super into the study of space and just an interest in the solar system and planets and stuff like that, but it was around that age, 6, 7, when we were living in Annapolis, and there were folks there training to be pilots to eventually be astronauts. So there were adults around me all the time who were like, oh, do you want to be an astronaut? Like, I can help you out with that.
Yes, sign me up. Where?
But as I'm sure many of you have figured out, I did not become an astronaut. Even at that very young age, it was clear to me that the pathway at that time was like, become a pilot, like be in the military, and then we'll send you to space. And I was like, I'm not into that. You know, I'm here to save the dolphins. Like, I don't want to fight anybody to then maybe get the chance to go to space.
Yeah, that's like low odds. Like,
yeah,
let's not do that.
Yeah. But I did declare, I think I was 7, I couldn't make up my mind if I wanted to be an artist or an astronaut. I was like, well, I should be both. I should paint Earth from space. But then I was like, don't join the military. I was like, I'll find a loophole.
Plus, like, that means that somebody else has to do all the physics, all the math, and you get to do the fun things, which is like talk to scientists and like do your own exploration into space.
Yes. Without
going to space yet.
Yes.
Keeping fingers crossed that that's an artist residency in the future for you.
Thank you.
So you're starting to go through school. When did you, like, what were your focuses as you're going into Austin College?
So as I got older, I can't say I was horrible at math and science, but it didn't quite click for me in ways that made me feel that I should go into STEM. But I really liked the social sciences and the humanities. So Austin College was a good fit for that. It's a small liberal arts college. And I had a really good experience studying psychology in high school. So I just went to AC to study the brain, because that's pretty wild, like pretty unknown, like space. So I got pretty far with that major. I was in research groups, doing like surveys. I did a little bit of lab work, but I was really like dedicated to being a researcher in the field of psychology.
What kind of lab work did you do? I didn't know this. This is really exciting.
It wasn't real high level stuff. Like I took lab courses, but this wasn't the stuff getting published into papers. But I took a really cool course about the brain, and we got to dissect mice brains and sheep brains and make little slides of them to look at under electron microscopes. So we were seeing like the actual cells in these brains and like how they talk to each other. It was beautiful stuff.
And you were also just like working with like a team of scientists, which for us as artists is not the most common thing.
Yeah.
We're kind of like personally, even though I did study chemistry, like I'm still intimidated by scientists. They're so cool. And then you start to take a leap forward with a study abroad program.
Yeah, so I specifically went to that school because they have a strong study abroad program, and I just really wanted to see the world, so I took every chance I could. They have what's called January terms, where you just go for the month of January with a class to study some topic. So I was able to do that a couple times, and then I did a full semester abroad, and that semester I did in Paris, France, specifically to study art history. So that's me in the Jardin de Luxembourg. holding someone else's flowers. I have no idea where those came from, but you're like, pose for a picture. I'm like, oui, chin up. But yeah, I had an awesome time there.
So during that time, like, what were you studying? Were you studying psychology while you were in France?
No, I had a weirdly hard time finding psychology classes to take abroad, and so I was a very kind of overachieving student and was kind of ahead on my credits. So I figured for this one semester, I can just do whatever I want and go home and finish my major and not have to do like a 5th year or something. So I just took art history. So I was like, well, Paris. And I chose Paris because I had been studying French for like 9 years at that point. I wanted to use it. I wanted to like see if I could like do it, you know, actually speak with locals. So I just kind of picked the city first and then the classes second. I was like, well, the Louvre is here. Like, let's take art history, right?
And you got to go to the Louvre every day.
Yeah, I took this phenomenal class where the professor, you know, we met in a classroom initially, but she was like, this is no way to learn art just from slides in the dark. You're all gonna get passes and we're gonna meet in the Louvre and we will have class like in front of the art every day. And that changed my life. I like to say it ruined me. I didn't want to do psychology anymore. It just kind of clicked that art was something I was meant to do.
But then you have to come back to the States.
I did.
I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm sorry. So how did you like re-enter after that great experience?
Yeah, it was helpful to come home to, you know, great friends who had also gone through the study abroad experience and the reverse culture shock and all that. So I wasn't alone. But yeah, I came back to a very welcoming art department. I just started emailing professors and saying, can I take art classes? I know I didn't start at, you know, 101. I've been doing this other major this whole time, but, you know, I've been making art as a hobby this whole time. Do you think I could slip in? They're like, yeah, come on in.
We're a small enough college.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's the benefit of a small school, is like open doors all the time. But yeah, in returning, after kind of having this artistic awakening, the faculty and my peers really kind of embraced me into the art community there. So I got to just kind of figure out who I was my last year of school through art. And I quit the psychology major, ended up with a French major. People are always like, how did you get a French major? What do you do with that? I'm like, it's a long story. I changed my mind a couple times.
It happens to us all.
Yeah.
So can you kind of talk about like what kind of art you were making during that time? Like specifically this image with the abstract landscape and this tiny little plane.
Yeah, so the previous slide had an abstract landscape, and then I get a little bit more literal. But just this lifelong fascination with Earth, I felt like I needed to keep engaging with it as a subject matter. When I get out of school and continue painting, I had the desire to make landscapes, but not in like a super traditional way. I really wanted to decenter the human element. Like, humans are part of this planet, like you can't really divorce the two, but I didn't want it to be human-centric or like, you know, this is our planet that we own. I really wanted to investigate like a symbiosis, or you could even argue kind of a parasitic relationship in some regards, but really just kind of treating the whole human experience as like, we're just another species here, like we're just another thing to study and look at and ask questions about. And so I start really kind of pulling back on the human presence in the art.
So then graduation happens.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah. And where do you land after graduating?
So having moved a lot as a child it was kind of a coping mechanism to just keep moving. Like, oh, I'm terrified of what to do as an adult with a brand new bachelor's degree.
French.
And it was 2010, like you couldn't get a good job. Yeah, like the recession was still strong. So I was working retail, and I was like, well, if I'm stuck working retail, I might as well do it somewhere cool. So I just kind of kept moving cities. So right after graduating, I went to New Orleans, worked in a bookstore. You know, it wasn't really anything major that brought me there. Wound up running out of money, going back home. Then I went to Chicago, tried to get into grad school. I was there, and it was just too competitive. So when I looked a little further out.
Into art grad and getting an MFA.
Yes. So because I didn't have a BFA or a bachelor's in art, I thought, well, why not try at the master's level, see if I can like scrape my way in there and actually get a full art education for myself and really be the best kind of artist I could be. But Chicago was way too competitive, at least for the level that I was at that time. And so then I found Memphis, and that's where I ultimately went to graduate school at the University of Memphis.
After like a self-imposed residency, just to try and help get your portfolio up to snuff, because like
I did have some fun employment in Memphis, and noticed, you know, I knew there were graduate programs there. I'm like, I could just live here for a little bit, spend all my time painting, and then really have a strong portfolio, and it worked.
Yeah, but also having the dedication to doing that and like staying focused and having that goal of actually making it to the MFA program. So, and then we get into MFA work. Yay!
Yeah, this is very strange work for some of y'all who know me.
Like, yeah, this is my first time seeing either of these works, so this is very unfamiliar to me. So in my notes here, it says that you really chose this program at University of Memphis because it was a 3-year program instead of a 2 years, because you thought maybe it would help give you more of a runway in a way.
Yeah, I felt like I was playing catch up, really. Like, I kind of couldn't believe it that I got in at all. And then with that 3rd year, I could really develop my practice and, you know, figure out the kind of art I wanted to make. And I needed it. I very, very desperately needed it. So this is pretty early. This is from my thesis. This I'm very proud of. This is more like where I'm kind of at now.
Yeah. So I would love to talk about how you see this as a portrait view.
So something that's very important to me in painting landscapes, and just, you know, a lot of you know me as doing planetary landscapes beyond Earth, like getting into space, but this all really started with Earth. In my thought process of decentering humans as like, you know, we see the horizon and it's beneath our feet, right? It's something we own or someone else owns. You know, you're thinking about property and manifest destiny and stuff like that. I thought that viewpoint is perpetuating those ideas. So if I flip it to a satellite view, you as the satellite are facing the planet, like person to person. So I'm not anthropomorphizing Earth, but it's kind of a gesture of respect, to have a little bit of distance and a change of perspective to say, like, I'm seeing you on equal footing. So I then looked a lot at satellite imagery, Google Earth, things like that, to find source material for the Earth-based artworks I was making.
Oh, I love that. But yeah, I've like highlighted and underlined portrait view because I think that's such a lovely way to start thinking about how you approach your works. Especially, I think it carries on to your like current body of work that you are seeing them as portraits. And then post-graduation, you keep moving.
Moved again.
Moved again. Where'd you move to?
I moved here. So I have family here, and I started dating my now husband, which was another draw to come back.
Hi, Pia.
But yeah, I came back to DFW like immediately after graduating with the MFA, and to some extent I was surprised at how many people from college, like professors and people like that, who were willing to kind of welcome me back and say, you know, go to this gallery or that gallery, and you know, here's how you can get your foot in the door. So that's more than I ever had at New Orleans or Chicago or anything like that, but it still wasn't much. I was coming home, but it kind of felt like moving somewhere new, because I didn't really know that many people, and so much had changed in the 7 years I had been gone. So the art scene has changed completely. I came back in 2016, but I left in 2010. So if any of you were around in the late 2000s to see how many galleries we had then versus now, like, it was a very different scene, I feel like.
But you're also like, did you have a studio at the time? Were you creating?
I was creating, but it was at home. So our little apartment that we shared together, just carved out space to try to make work. And this was kind of anticipating that. These are all separate pieces that I had to paint individually and then stick together with little metal rings, because I was thinking ahead to, you know, I had this beautiful studio in graduate school that was as big as this room. It was truly massive. I know. I was so spoiled, and I knew I'd be graduating to nothing. So I was trying to think of strategies of how to work in a modular way where I could make big, impactful work, but still do it at like a little desk at home.
Yeah, and then be able to put it away in a little box.
And it is in a little box right now, this piece. Oh no, not this piece, but a similar one.
Okay.
This one,
Where's this one?
This one is at the University of Memphis. They collected it.
Oh, that's so,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Very proud of that acquisition. It's on Yupo. They're little squares of Yupo about this big, and then I don't know how well you can see, but behind
Nope, wrong way.
behind each piece of Yupo is a cut piece of, it's kind of like construction paper in the shape of a map. So there are little shadows of maps behind all of these little landscape-looking colors. So yeah, 2 squares per spot.
Yeah.
Little jump rings used for jewelry.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're hung in columns and just like placed very close together. So they're not attached left or right.
And then you can just kind of put them all away into a box.
Yeah.
Into a tiny desk.
And it flutters, like it'll catch air currents. It's really quite a interesting installation.
How is it working on Yupo and trying to figure out how to like display it? Because I know that's a big struggle for a lot of Yupo artists.
Yeah, you can't put it directly behind glass because whatever's on the Yupo can just like peel off onto the glass. So you need a mat or a spacer. And then I wasn't interested in framing my work anyway. I wanted this kind of like big stuff. So I noticed that if you hole punch Yupo, if it's like a true hole punch, it will hold that shape. If you cut it at all, you can tear along the cut, but it really won't tear if you've truly like
Good circular cut.
So I was punching holes in these to put the rings through it, so they could just live in the open air and not have to worry about things kind of peeling off of it.
Or transferring to the glass. Yeah, that's very tricky.